Hey, and welcome to the channel. So today we'll be thinking about alternative careers to clinical psychology. I think this is good to think about whether you are actually considering clinical psychology just to have a plan B, but also it's good to know, why you want to be a clinical psychologist rather than all these other potential jobs that can be a little bit similar to clinical psychology. Or perhaps you've graduated with a degree in psychology or are currently doing the degree and you just want to explore what other options are available for you. So I'm hoping either way this will be really helpful to you. We're just going to go and mention about 25 different jobs that I thought were in some way related to clinical psychology, but just maybe very briefly go into a little bit of detail about each one. But really, I just want to mention these jobs. And if anything strikes you, anything sounds interesting, then you can really go into more depth and do your own research about the jobs. By the way, in the background, we have the beautiful, beautiful Lake District here in England. If you've never been, I recommend it. It's absolutely stunning. Anyway, apologies for any seagull noises in the background. But yeah, so I'm hoping to kind of mention these jobs, but in the future maybe to get some people who have actually done them and see what it's really like. So do consider subscribing to the channel as well. So let's get to it. I think the first thing to think about, even before we jump into these jobs, I do have a list, by the way, because I'm not going to remember all of them off the top of my head. But it's to think about a few questions such as what, who, and where. So you might be thinking, what is it about clinical psychology that I actually like? And maybe these other jobs are more suited to me. Or maybe why do I want to be a clinical psychologist rather than anything else? So what, is it the mental health side? Is it that I'm really interested in mental health? In which case, I think there are a lot of other careers like, counselling psychology that open up to me as well. Or is it the neuro side that I prefer? If it is neuro, then again, there are other careers that you might be thinking about, or maybe you just want to help people in some way, which again opens up even more jobs, I think, for you. So one question is what, another question is who. I think some of the three basic splits maybe when thinking about populations are children, working age adults, or older adults. And you might be that you really enjoy working with older adults, and so you want to look for some kind of a career with them. Or equally, you might not want to work with kids. So it's good to know what we don't like as well, to help us know and figure out what we do like and what we could do in the future. And other populations might be things like people with psychosis, people with learning disabilities, people or difficulties, or people with any sort of eating disorders. I mean, there's a lot to it. So yeah, a lot of questions you can ask yourself. Another one would be where. So I know for myself, I absolutely love hospitals, but I know some people absolutely hate them. So if you're like me, I definitely want to try to find a career in a hospital, ideally. You might be thinking about community settings, again, or anything like that. So yeah, do have a think even before starting this, what it is that you actually enjoy, and that will help you figure out maybe what to do in the future. Okay, so let's jump into the actual jobs themselves. I think the first and obvious one really is counselling psychology. So in some ways it is similar to clinical psych, but I think maybe a bit more of a focus on the mental health and less sort of researchy and things like that. To get into it, you can either do a doctorate in counselling psychology, although currently it's not funded as the clinical doctorate is. Perhaps that makes it a little bit less popular. Or you can do courses, sort of level 2, level 3, level 4, and so in counselling to actually become a counsellor. So that's one possibility. There's another one which is an emerging kind of career in the psychology circle, which is called a clinical associate psychologist, CAP. And I don't think, sorry, I can just see sheep in the background running. You don't often see them run. Anyway, so yeah, CAP. There again, emerging career. I don't think there are that many courses that do them yet. I think the idea is sort of to bridge the gap between psychologists and the community. And I know it's a lower banding. I think you're definitely being in a lower banding than clinical psych, and you are still supervised by a clinical psychologist. But it is a possibility as well. It would be actually really interesting to speak to someone who has done it, because it's such a new thing in the NHS and what they make of it. So next possible thing is educational psychology. If you like education, if you like working in schools, this might be for you. There is forensic psychology as well. I know some people are interested in that. You have health psychology, which looks at health conditions and mental health specifically in there. Or you could be a sports psychologist. I don't know many sports psychologists, but if that's your sort of thing, that's another thing to consider. Although there might be fewer jobs available for that particular one. Another related thing is CBT therapist. I know I had someone who did a clinical doctorate interview, and one of the questions was specifically, why do you want to be a clinical psychologist rather than a CBT therapist? Because actually a lot of it is overlapping. CBT models are used in all the doctorates, I think. So you will definitely be learning CBT as part of being a clinical psychologist, but then you do much more as well. But maybe actually you do like CBT and maybe it's your thing, so you could just focus on that in your career. Similarly to that one, you can be a specific therapist in specific therapies rather than a clinical psychologist that sort of has an overview maybe of some. So things like EMDR, eye movement desensitization therapist, you could just train in that and you could just focus your career on that. You could be a family therapist, that's another option. Or if you're really creative and like that sort of thing, you can be an art therapist or a music therapist, play therapist with kids. So yeah, a lot of options there as well. Now another related thing is the psychological wellbeing practitioner, PWP, which you might have heard of. I think this is funded. So you do a course at university which lasts approximately, I think, 9 months, maybe depending on where you do it. And you train in low intensity CBT, low intensity cognitive behavioral therapy, and then you can move on to high intensity therapy if you so wish in the future as well. Now, recent additions to that career are the children's PWP. So again, if you want to work with kids specifically, that might be something. Or they also have the educational psychologists, mental health practitioners, I think they're called, educational mental health practitioners, which is again another course that you can do. And that one, you work, in schools and college settings. Okay, so next one, which is maybe a little bit more obscure, I don't know how many people know about it, but applied behavioural analyst. Again, there might not be a huge sort of field for that particular job, ABA analyst, but if you like working with autism and the sort of behavioural side of things, that might be interesting to you. Let's see what else we've got. So now going off to slightly different jobs, but mental health nurse. You could be a nurse and then specialise in mental health. That's a possibility to you as well. Slightly different to a psychologist, I guess. But again, it's up to what it is that you actually want to do. If you like mental health and you like hospitals maybe or community settings, as well as the sort of biological side and helping people, this could be a career for you. Another one is mental health social worker. So I think there are currently some graduate schemes in mental health social work that you can do. So another option, which is sort of more mental health related. Right, so the next one is scientist training practitioner. Scientist practitioner training? One of those, I forgot. You can do this after you finish. If you've graduated for psychology degree, then you can do, it's a master's course that is currently funded. And I think they tend to last for 3 years, and you do placements at the same time as your specialisation. Now, there are a lot to choose from in a way, but we are constrained depending on what it is that you did during your undergrad. So if you did psychology, one option is genetic counselling. That's something that will be opened up to you. The good thing about this is that it is currently funded, the course, which I know makes it easier than maybe just a clinical, counselling psychologist, which you have to self-fund yourself really. So do look into that one if that's something you might be interested in. Another one for the scientist training practitioner is neurophysiologist. Now this is, I think if you just did psychology, you might not be able to do this. If you did sort of something more biological, you can apply for this. But if you have a master's in something neuro-related and you like neuro things, this is a good potential career for you as well. It is quite competitive, just like clinical psychology is. But I guess, worthwhile things in life often are. And I think here you'll be doing EEGs, unevoked potentials, and sort of seeing people's electrical activity in their brain, working with those sort of techniques predominantly to help and figure out what's going on in their nervous system. Next one is graduate entry medicine. Again, moving off from psychology into sort of more biology territory right now. But you could specialise as, a psychiatrist, say, or a neurologist, which does still have some links to psychology. And I feel like the career prospects are probably good because people always need doctors. Okay, next one I could think of are all the allied healthcare professionals. So I'm talking occupational therapists, which may be slightly more similar to psychologists, or you can be a physiotherapist. Quite different, but again, you are helping people. You are working in the NHS, and I do know some physios, and they are great. Or you could be a speech and language therapist as well. Next one, slightly cheeky, not really a career, but you could do a PhD. You could consider doing a PhD and going into research. So either the becoming a professor or a teaching associate side of things, and teaching at a higher institution, or you could go down the research route afterwards and maybe become a research practitioner within the NHS or at universities as well in something that you are interested in psychology. Okay, another thing, and we are reaching the end now. So that's just a teacher, not just a teacher, but a teacher. So you could either maybe teach at a special needs school with people with learning disabilities and those sorts of things, if that's your thing. Or you could teach psychology to others. If you're really passionate about the subject and want to share that, you could teach, I guess, secondary schools, or there are a few schools that would do psychology at GCSE level, but I guess colleges and places like that as well. Okay, so those are all the jobs that I could think of, quite a few, and this is just an overview. But if anything stroke you, that's really weird to say, if anything was striking to you, I hope you didn't get a stroke from listening to me, do research it in more depth. Hopefully it'll be helpful. Do consider subscribing as well, and I hope you have a lovely day.